Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the podcast and the YouTube channel. We have a Saturday night divisional round AFC matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. Showdown slate on whatever site you prefer. I'll be using the DraftKings salaries here, but you have the MVP Showdown, whatever it might be called over on FanDuel. Very exciting one-game slate here because, there's 6+ figures on the line. There's a lot of attention on this game. Winner goes to the AFC Championship, and it should be a very good game for teams that are very similar. Now, the Ravens are decent-sized favorites here at home, as they should be, but very similar in terms of how both of these teams want to win the game. Slow the game down, run the ball a ton. The Titans, though, just don't have as great of an operating offense, a scheme, as well as nowhere near as good of a defense, but we'll see what happens. There's some injury news to account for. Mark Ingram was limited on Thursday. He is day-to-day. Right now, I'm leaving him in for all kinds of projections, but I'll talk about what happens if he is out and where my interest will go for the Showdown slate. You can check out my main slate coverage, unless that already has started. Then you can check out tomorrow's 2-game slate, which I will have a video out. Already have one out by the time you're probably viewing this for that, so be sure to check that out as well. And if this is your first time here, what's up? My name's Sal, and just to incentivize you to hit the subscribe button, if this content is not great enough for you by the time you get through it and it doesn't give you any benefit, or hopefully it does, if you hit that subscribe button, you can be entered into a chance. Subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube, and then drop down in the comments, who is your favorite positional player below $4,000? Not a defense, not a kicker. Favorite positional player on the slate? Comment that down below. Must be a subscriber. With the notification bell turned on, you'll be entered into a contest for a $50 giveaway, which I will be announcing and reaching out to the winner after the week ends, heading into championship week on Monday. So be sure to get into that contest. And yes, I do have Patreon exclusive content. We'll have tiers up for this Saturday Showdown slate. We'll have projections as well for the entire weekend already up there for the NFL. Lots of other content for MLB on a daily basis, as well as PGA now that has started up. First full field event is actually going on right now. So thank you for being here. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on my social medias. And lastly, I would like to actually shout out Drafters.com. Drafters.com, promo code SAL100, SAL100, get you a 100% deposit bonus. What they are is an online snake draft format. They have some other game modes as well, but just like when you're playing in season long, you can play it in 5 to 10 minutes, draft a lineup for this slate, rank them, draft a lineup for potentially NBA, NFL for next week. It is a very fun format. It is something that I enjoy a lot. And now that draft is gone, play draft is completely gone. They're not going to be running in 2020. This seems like the best alternative. I recommend them. 100% deposit bonus using the promo code SAL100. That is SAL100 to let them know that you came from me. Let's get into it. All the plugs are out of the way. Hope you all are having a good start to your day, evening, night, whenever you might be watching this. Hopefully your teams have won, or if they're playing in this one, best of luck to them moving forward. Starting at the top, Lamar Jackson. He's played on 2 Showdown slates this year. He's been 13,000 plus on both of them. He's been goddamn needed on both of them. I believe in both of those games he threw for 5 touchdowns. If not, he definitely did in one. He went over 100 rushing yards or close to it in the other one. He's been needed. And here's the thing. He's 13,600. Yes, but when you look at this Baltimore team, there's not many players outside of him and maybe Mark Andrews, maybe Ingram if he's healthy, that can go for like a 25+ point performance. And really, it's Lamar Jackson by far and away. I mean, he's averaging 29.4 fantasy points per game this year. Outside of that, on his own team, the next closest is Mark Andrews at 14.28, less than half. So I don't really expect anybody else to get near 25 outside of Lamar. And then outside on the Tennessee side, you have Derrick Henry. He surely can. He's been doing it so much, getting so much volume in the playoffs, and I imagine they want to continue going that way. But nobody else in this matchup, A.J. Brown, I don't think has a 25+ point upside. Nobody else after that. Ryan Tannehill in this matchup, no way against the secondary on the road is a huge underdog with a terrible team total. If Lamar Jackson, at this steep price point, even if he goes for 22, 24, he's probably going to be needed. When the highest scoring player on the slate by a decent margin of maybe 5 or 6 points or 5 or 6 points over everybody but one player is scoring that many points, even at 13,600, he's probably going to be needed. So it's hard to ignore Lamar Jackson here. He's had 2 weeks off now. He is still a guy averaging over 80 rushing yards per game. Tennessee has no pass rush. They have no secondary. It's a plus 20% advantage for the pass blocking unit of Baltimore. The run blocking unit has that same exact advantage of plus 20%. Great spot here. If you're going to get 25 from Lamar, which I would project somewhere around there, I've been projected for just around 25 fantasy points. It is a really good spot for him with a bunch of low ceiling players on this slate. I like Lamar a ton. Mark Andrews, I also like at 9,200. Now, when you start to play Lamar at 13,600, it makes it harder to get to other players, but I would like to get to Mark Andrews if possible. He has a number 1 matchup, not only in this game, but the entire weekend for tight ends. According to Pro Football Focus, I'm projecting him for 8 targets here, and very similar to the statement for Lamar. If Mark Andrews is going to go out there, run his normal 20 to 24 routes in this one. He's going to connect and really run around on almost all of Lamar's drop back. He's going to connect for around 14, 15 fantasy points. It's going to be a spot where you probably need him. I do like the matchup a lot. And then Justin Tucker, a kicker, is a yes for me. Look, usually I say both kickers are just maybes, but Justin Tucker is an elite kicker, the number one kicker in the league. And when you're projected for 10 more points than the opposing team and your field goal prop is almost 3 more points higher for another field goal in terms of DFS points than the other kicker, it's just a spot for only $200 more that I'll get to Tucker. There's not a lot of reliable 4K players unless we get some news on Mark Ingram before the weekend is here and before this game starts that he's going to be out. Then some more open up in the running back department for Baltimore. But for right now, Justin Tucker is a very safe yes. A guy as a kicker averaging almost 10 fantasy points per game is pretty ridiculous. Ravens defense is a maybe. The only reason I didn't put them as a yes is, yes, they are big home favorites, and that would force Tannehill, in theory, to throw more than the 15 times he threw last week. You get him to throw 25 times in this one, that's absolutely fantastic. You should probably force some turnovers. But if they only throw 20 times because they keep that 10-point spread within like 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 for most of the game, and they can still run Derrick Henry 30 plus times in this one, well, it's really hard to force turnovers from Derrick Henry. It's much easier to force turnovers when you can force some pressure, which they don't do that all that well against Tannehill, who has been pretty efficient this year. So at $5,800, it doesn't seem as great of a spot for this defense as you might think as 10-point home favorites, just because the game is going to be very slow, a couple less possessions, and a ton less pass attempts, at least is what the game plan is going to be for Tennessee as opposed to running, and that doesn't really help a defense score points. Derrick Henry at $12,200. I like him here. I love him on a showdown slate. I just like Lamar Jackson more for $1,200 more. So can you fit both of these guys in? Yeah, you would need them to both probably go for like 25 to 30 points to make the rest of your lineup stand out. I think it's viable. You probably would not be able to get either of them in the captain spot, but and then at that point, your captain spot might be something gross. Maybe you go Ravens defense, but that seems pretty odd. So it's really hard to kind of get a lineup with the two of them that makes sense. I do think it is probably viable, though. So at $12,200, I do prefer Lamar. I think that Derrick Henry probably projects for 10 less carries than last week, maybe around 24 or 25, which would be 10 less than last week's 34. He's only projecting for a little over 15 fantasy points for me right now. It is just not that great of a spot when you're a 10-point underdog. If they can keep it close, yes, you'll get those extra 5, 6, 7 carries. But if they go down by 10 at any point in the first half, early second half, they're going to have to throw 10 more times than last week, which is going to directly pull out of Derrick Henry's rush attempts. Mark Ingram, he's in yellow for me because, well, he's 9,800. Either way, I don't really like him, but keep an eye on his health status. Like, he practiced in unlimited. Keep an eye, he's day-to-day. Tennessee is top 3 in tackling, top 3 in run defense. They absolutely shut down anything New England was trying to do last week. You're pretty much going to get 15 carries out of Ingram here, and he's probably not 100% healthy. Now, his upside, although 9,800, is the red zone rushing, but at $9,800, I think I'll pass regardless. I have him as a maybe. I think I'd rather just put him as a no. A.J. Brown is not that appealing here at $8,600. Now, the price point is nice, but he'll get a matchup against Jimmy Ward or Jimmy Smith, who Jimmy Smith this year has a pass rating in the 60s, top 10 in the league, and he still is 20 pounds smaller than A.J. Brown. But he's the biggest cornerback on Baltimore when you compare Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. Those guys are like 35 to 40 pounds lighter than A.J. Brown. So it has to be Jimmy Smith for most of this game. And I do like that Ryan Tannehill as an underdog should throw a little bit more, but this is still a top 3 secondary in the league. Jimmy Smith has been elite. There might be some plays where you just double team A.J. Brown with somebody over the top, and then you play one-on-one coverage with Marcus Peters and Corey Davis, and that is very easy to do. So A.J. Brown, similar to last week, they didn't throw a lot, only 15 times, but even if you throw twice as much, 30 times, it's still going to be extremely difficult to pay off an $8,600 price tag, in my opinion. Hollywood Brown is just a gross price. $7,600 for a guy who, over his last 5 healthy games, has 11 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. That's brutal. Now, he's running the most routes on this team, about 20 per week on the season, but he's not a guy who, and I think it's a lot of injury reasons why, he's not going to be just a standout player. Now, he has touchdown upside around the red zone this year in very limited samples of the red zone passing that this team has actually done, not to tight ends. But at $7,600, you would think that he's a shoo-in to see 6, 8 targets a game. He's lucky to see 4 targets in a game, and a lot of those just aren't downfield like they were in weeks 1, 2, and 3. So for Marquise Brown right now, I'm not too thrilled with the $7,600 price tag for a guy who I think is actually playing pretty unhealthy. Now, his upside is that Tennessee is bottom 10 in pressure rates, bottom 10 in coverage, but then you also throw in the downside as a 10-point favorite in this one. Lamar might throw 20 times, and you're going to probably have around 10 of those to tight ends, probably 2 of those to running backs, and then the 8 are going to be to the 4 wide receivers that run routes. It's just not a good look for Hollywood Brown when he's $7,600, and to me, he's a very similar player to all the 2,000, and maybe not in skill set, but in terms of DFS purposes and opportunity and targets, he's a very similar player to the guys who are $2,000 less than him, $4,000 less than him in this Baltimore passing game. Gus Edwards is a maybe currently for me. He probably sees 8 to 10 targets or touches if Ingram is in. But if Ingram is out, you can see Gus Edwards seeing 16 touches at 4,200. He would be a strong yes. Jonnu Smith at 3,600, price like the kickers. I do like it. It's a brutal matchup against Earl Thomas and this secondary for him. I'm going to project him for around 5 targets. I think he sees a little bit more of a bump than last week because they should pass more in this one. The price is fine. You get 5 targets out of him, maybe 1 or 2 red zone targets. He's priced cheaper than the kickers, cheaper than the Baltimore defense. It's an okay spot for a position player who has been strong this year. Okay spot meaning that he's a good price point. The matchup, don't get it twisted, is brutal. Hayden Hurst and Nick Boyle, the backup, the second and third string tight ends who are always out on the field. Nick Boyle over the last 5 weeks has run more routes than Mark Andrews. He's running a ton of routes this year, but he's just not being used that much, right? Last 4 games, 6 catches, 38 yards on 9 targets, running 15.5 routes per week during that span, more than Mark Andrews once again, third on the team overall, behind Seth Roberts and Hollywood Brown. The downside is he's low upside. You're probably going to get 2 targets out of him. You need the 2 catches for 10 yards and a touchdown to really pay off 1,800. Even if he has a 1 catch, 3-yard touchdown, that's 7.3 points. Might not be enough at just 1,800 to get it done for you. So he's in play for me, but like all these guys at the low end here are just guys that you barely want to get to, because get to one of them at most, because your upside is like 7 to 8 fantasy points. I mean, you have Nick Boyle, 4.69 fantasy points per game. Hayden Hurst, 4.81. Hayden Hurst is $600 more expensive. He's ran 12.8 routes. Less routes over the last 4 weeks. Now he's seen 2 more targets at 11. He's caught 8 balls for 122 yards, but a lot of that was on one really big chunk play. So I think Hayden Hurst and Boyle are very similar. I think I might just go to Boyle for $600 less. Hayden Hurst is targeted more downfield and a little bit more in the season in the red zone, but it's just by like 1 or 2 more targets. These guys are very comparable. You get 2 targets, maybe 3 out of each of them in this one at most. They're somewhat cheap, but at $2,400 and $1,800, they're very close to nose for me. I just wanted to give you some options, because if I start listing all these guys as nose, you're just going to end up having like 10 guys to choose from, which might be the actual play when Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are so expensive. Just jam them in. Hayden Hurst and Boyle are very low-end options for me. Same thing could be said for Justice Hill. If Mark Ingram is in, I think he sees around 4 touches as a rookie. I don't think he gets too much work. If Mark Ingram is out, I think he sees around 12 touches, maybe 14. He has a better passing game role and skill set than Gus Edwards, so he'll be involved there. At $1,600, Justice Hill becomes that piece on this slate that might be able to allow you to fit in Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, but only if Mark Ingram was to miss. I do think he would become in play. Lastly, Seth Roberts at $2,600, not that appealing, but 7 catches, 122 yards over the last 4 games on just 11 targets. So, I mean, you're barely getting 2 receptions a game, a little bit less than that over the last month of games that he's played. And during that time, you're getting like 26 receiving yards per game. He hasn't done much. He's just running a decent amount of routes for this Baltimore team, just under 17 per game over the last month of the season. Been around that on the season as well. I think you get 2 to 3 targets here. I would rather play Seth Roberts over Hayden Hurst. He's $200 more expensive. He's seeing the exact same usage in terms of routes, a little bit more routes, but in terms of targets, at least he's running his routes more downfield, and it will be a deeper touchdown opportunity if he is targeted. That being said, Hayden Hurst, Nick Boyle, Seth Roberts, I'd be shocked if one of them sees more than 3 targets. They're all averaging less than 5 fantasy points per game this year. They are not that great of options. You are really taking a risk by playing any of them, and you're lucky if one of them pays off. You kind of hold your nose and hope that Justice Hill can get some action if Mark Ingram is out or limited, but this bottom range is pretty disgusting. There's not that many options on this slate, to be honest with you. A lot of them are pretty gross here. So, moving down now, Ryan Tannehill is a no for me at 10-2. He's just expensive. He's going to face a top 5 secondary. It's not going to be that much pressure in his face, but you're going to probably see 20 to 25 pass attempts, and 30-plus rush attempts is going to be the game plan. I don't have all that much interest in him. Willie Snead at $5,200, he's just running 19.8 routes per week, very similar to what Seth Roberts has been running as of late. Seth Roberts running more routes than him over the last month of the season, and he's $5,200, double the price of Seth Roberts. He's only averaging 1.9 receptions and 21.2 yards per game this year. I'd rather not go there. Corey Davis is wildly expensive at $4,800. You might say, how is he wildly expensive? He's been terrible. Has not gone over 9 fantasy points, has not gone over 7 fantasy points this season with Ryan Tannehill. He got goose-egged last week, well, because, he faced Stephon Gilmore and also J.C. Jackson, and Corey Davis is just not good. They only threw 15 times to give him the benefit of the doubt. No catches on 2 targets. But now he faces Marcus Peters, who's been a top 10 cornerback in all cornerback efficiency grades this year. And you have just no connection with Ryan Tannehill here. I'm not shocked to see another 0 out of Davis. $4,800 seems like a wildly expensive price tag to me. Greg Joseph is a no for me at $3,800. He's the other kicker. You can play him. Honestly, he should probably be a maybe on this list. I just prefer Justin Tucker, and I don't really like playing 2 kickers, so that's why I put him as a no personally. I think Deion Lewis sees a little bit more work this week, but he's still $3,400. Like, you might get an extra 1 or 2 touches out of him, but he's priced up for it. He's not just $2,200. So if you get 5 touches out of him this week instead of 4, is that really worth it if they're trailing? I don't think so. Tajay Sharp is not going to be that effective at $3,000 with Khalif Raymond cleared from the concussion protocol. He'll probably see 6 routes, maybe 8 routes out of the slot, which directly takes away from a guy like Tajay Davis, who last week, when they only threw about 15, 16 dropbacks in the entire game, ended up running only 9 routes. He did run 14 routes in week 17 when Raymond and Adam Humphries, who is expected to miss this week as well, were out. But with Raymond back, I think you get somewhere around 10 routes run for Tajay Sharp. That's not great at $3,000 by any means. Titans defense, I'm not going there as 10-point road underdogs. They don't have a pass rush. They don't have a good secondary, and Baltimore is just going to run nonstop. So how do you get fantasy points in that department? You really don't. Anthony Firkser got a lucky touchdown last week, and now he's priced up to $2,200. Ridiculous price point. He's averaging 8.6 routes run per week, and last week he only ran 7. He ran the exact same amount of routes as Michael Pruitt last week, who had 2 catches for 4 yards. They both ran 7 routes last week. Anthony Firkser just happened to find the end zone, and now he's $2,000 more expensive. If for some reason you're putting Anthony Firkser at $2,200 into your Showdown lineups this week, just donate your money to some kind of charity. Because for $200, Michael Pruitt's there, and he is the exact same player. They're running very similar routes on the entire season. They're both going to run around 8 routes in this entire game, and you're probably going to see at best 1 target for one of them. Might as well play the guy who's $2,000 less. That said, I don't want either of them. Miles Boykin at $2,000 is running just 7.5 routes per game over the last month for Baltimore. No thank you. Khalif Raymond, I did mention, is going to be coming back cleared from the concussion protocol, but you're probably getting like at most 8 routes run out of him, probably less than that at $200. I'd rather not get there. Patrick Ricard, the fullback for Baltimore, is on the field a lot, but your upside is like 1 to 2 touches out of this guy. Even a 1-yard touchdown and having like 6.1 fantasy points out of him at $200, it's surely great, right? It's really good, but it's no lock to even be needed, and I don't even think he gets that type of production as his quote-unquote ceiling game. So that's 26 players overall that I just broke down for you. Players that I have interest in is 14 of them. You can throw the other kicker in there for 15. But I went through these guys. Like A.J. Brown's very close to a no for me. Hollywood Brown's very close to a no. The only reason that they're maybes at their crazy, especially Marquise Brown, crazy $7,600 tag. The only reason that they're maybes is there's not that many players on this slate. Like, you get down a little bit more, Hayden Hurst, Nick Boyle, Seth Roberts. Those are all guys who, one of them probably catches, I don't know, a 10-yard touchdown in this game and is needed, but I can't tell you which one that is. They're all going to see 2 or 3 targets. It's a very gross slate. I like Lamar. I like Andrews. I like Justin Tucker. I think Ravens defense is fine. I think Derrick Henry is fine. After that, not a lot looks great. Jonnu Smith looks okay. You really hope that Mark Ingram misses this one, so you open up a lot of Justice Hill at a cheap tag and Gus Edwards. And yes, I would be okay playing both of them at those price points. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button. It does help me out a ton. And also, get down, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get down below in the comments. Who is your favorite positional player below $4,000? I'll give you mine right now, so you can't count kickers or defenses. My favorite position player below $4,000, this is kind of an if-then. It's going to be Jonnu Smith. But if Mark Ingram is out, it'll be Justice Hill. Let me know who yours is. For a chance to win $50, I will be reaching out to the winners on Monday. But you must be a subscriber with the notification bell turned on. Also, you can check out my Patreon exclusive content. That is linked up down below. I'll also link it up above right now. The pop-up comes up. You can click it. Just see what I have to offer over there. I'm an independent content creator all by my lonesome here. So I do appreciate it if you do want to donate over there or if you just want to get that type of content. So thank you so much. Check out my social medias and be sure to check out Drafters.com. A ton of fun to play over there. It's different than the salary caps. Promo code SAL100, SAL100, lets them know that you came from me and get you a 100% deposit batch up to $50. Thank you so much. Enjoy this game. You all rock. Have a great weekend. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video above my head. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, I do ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a good amount to reach more people. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's over there. Right in the corner is my @SalVetriDFS Twitter. And then above, you'll find my Patreon link. You can click on that if you want more exclusive content for me. Or a video is going to pop up, so why don't you check that one out as well. I think it's going to be beneficial for you. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.